welcome to the 8th Speakers Corner virtual masterclass. It's all about building a team culture in an evolving workplace. I'm Geeta Pendse and I'm a journalist and a presenter, and just like you, I'm sure you've experienced the magic when teams work well together, we're all connected and in flow. And just like everyone else, I've also been experiencing all the shifts and changes working in a team, the challenges at the moment, but also the opportunities. And I think whether you're in broadcasting, whether you're in an SME or a FTSE 100 corporation, there has been a seismic shift in the way that we're working and the way that we're living. And it feels like this topic today that's been organised by Speakers Corner couldn't be more relevant, really. In the next hour, we'll be hearing from 3 leading thinkers. We'll be hearing from Jameel Qureshi, from Dr. Yitzka Kromer, and from Dawson. And they'll be sharing their expert opinion on what this means, you know, whether you're a team manager, a department head, a business leader. How do you build that team ethos? How do you create that sense of connection? How do you create positive impacts when it comes to your targets? But also, you know, how do we genuinely collaborate when the ground beneath us, it seems sometimes, is shifting in how we're working and how we're living? And I guess also very importantly, you know, how do we create those support networks at a time when we really do need them? So in this session, which we're really glad that you can come along to, we'll be hearing from the 3 speakers. They'll each have a little bit of time to share their expertise. And then at the end, we do have a Q&A section. So while you're listening, if anything comes to mind that you think, I'd really like to ask that question to one of our panelists or all of them, please do use the Q&A box. So there should be a Q&A chat box. If you just put your question in there and send it to us, and then at the end, when we're in that Q&A section, I'll try and put those questions to the panelists. And I've got my pen, I've got my paper, always got a notebook handy, because I feel like I'll be making a lot of notes. So let's get started. Let's go to our first speaker today. I'm really delighted to introduce Jameel Qureshi. Now, Jamil is one of our foremost practitioners when it comes to performance enhancing psychology. He was one of an elite band of external psychologists who were invited in to study astronauts as part of the NASA space program, which I can only imagine must have been such an incredible experience to be a part of. And he has worked with businesses of all sizes to try and really tap into fulfilling their potential by orchestrating change and performance programs. So I'm really delighted to say hello to Jameel. Hello.
Thank you very much, Geeta. Thank you indeed. And hello to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for allowing me to be part of your day. I'm a psychologist, I am a performance coach, and I'm very lucky. I get the chance to work with some very good business teams and some very good sports teams. And I guess what I do is I help people cultivate a mindset for success. So I say that for us to act differently, we need to think differently. For us to create different behaviors, it's all about creating different mindsets to start with. So I spend my time, or certainly spent my time when the world was normal and things were sane, at how I was wandering around the world talking to teams about that very matter. This year I've been supporting a number of teams on a retained basis in several companies, I guess helping them with leadership in a new context. How do we put our teams together and maximize the potential to allow our teams to perform at their optimum in a changing world? And that's what we're talking about a little bit today. I know that we haven't got long, and I know there's going to be a little Q&A afterwards. We'll be delighted to hear from you. It's one of those tricky afternoon sessions where all I can see is initials. I quite like it when people have got their cameras on. I can see into their home as I talk. I'm a very nosy speaker. But hey, look, let's get on with it. One of the things that people always ask me is, what is success? And I get that asked quite a lot, actually. What is success? I always say that success is about making the connection between 2 things previously unconnected. That's my definition of success. Make the connection between 2 things previously unconnected. It's usually 2 ideas coming together, which allow success to take place, or 2 people coming together. arguing, debating, sharing, allowing knowledge to flow and to create something which is bigger and better than what they could create on their own. That's usually where success comes from. So I'm a great believer in connectivity. And I don't know about you guys, but the more that we've been asked to stay apart, the more I've realized we need to be together. I'm a massive believer in connectivity and knowledge sharing, and I believe the future of teams is all about that. So I always believe that communities outperform bureaucracies and hierarchies when it comes to maximizing human talent. And there's lots of examples of that at the moment. So maybe we shouldn't look at our teams as teams or organizations or institutions. Maybe we should look at them as communities, a community with a purpose. And I always say that purpose maximization will always drive profit maximization. So the more purposeful we can become at the moment, the more successful we can become. And many organizations I'm working with at the moment are taking a viewpoint that it's first things first, second things never. Let's really concentrate on the things that really make an impact. And connecting in a way which allows knowledge to be shared to contextualize the world which is changing as fast as it is. So I'm a firm believer that it is not change that catches organizations out. It is the pace of change which catches organizations out. And you can't trust the future to anyone who champions the past. The future demands us to be different. And part of that difference is in knowledge sharing. Coming together, argue, debate, share, to create things which are bigger and better than what we could create on our own. That's what it's about for me. I did lots of work at Hewlett Packard last year. And Hewlett Packard had this internal narrative. One of the things they said was, if Hewlett Packard knew what Hewlett Packard knows, we would be 3 times more successful. And it's so true of any community, isn't it? So true of any organization, any team. How many people on the call? We've got lots of people on the call, hundreds of people on the call. Can you imagine if we could take what's in your heads now, take your contacts, take your knowledge, your wisdom, your expertise, place it all on one table and all have access to it. Imagine how successful every single one of us would become. It'd be incredible. If knowledge could become a new asset class in any team or any community moving forwards, it really would be phenomenal. And I honestly believe that companies no longer compete against companies. I see that all the time at the moment across sectors. Companies no longer compete against companies, networks compete against networks. And you really are as strong as your network. Now, there's an external narrative for whatever organization you are in at the moment on that one. There's also an internal narrative too. I honestly believe that individuals will only be as strong as the partnerships and networks they can forge. So we need to form better teams, be more connected and share more. I honestly believe that our only sustainable competitive advantage is to learn faster and better than your competitors. But how do we do that if we're not sharing, connecting, arguing and debating? If we're genuinely working in isolation, fiefdoms of knowledge, working remotely, driving our own figures, driving our own accounts, driving our own clients or geographies, it can't happen. So no one person knows the answer at the moment in this disrupted world. And what we need to do is to form bottom-up diverse teams, collaborative teams, which allow us to be successful. Take the wisdom of many to contextualize the world, difference of opinion, become more inclusive with people who have diverse thought, and allow us to share, argue and debate our way to betterment. That's what it's about for me. Some basic psychology in our sort of 5 minutes or so, which is left, that we often think and then we feel and then we act. So this is how we work as human beings. This is how you work. This is how your customers work, how your colleagues work. It's how your children work, it's how your partners work. Is that we think and then we feel and then we act. Now, so often our actions or behaviors when we are in a team is dependent upon how we feel. That is dependent upon the precursor, which is the thoughts. So we think in words and we think in pictures. That's how we think. In regard to the words, we speak at a rate of 80 to 100 words a minute. But our minds are like soil. Whatever thought you plant will nourish and grow. This is why we need to be careful. So we think in a particular way, it makes us feel a particular way, and then we act upon it. So if we want to drive different behaviors in our team at the moment, you can go straight to actions and tell people to be different. We do that all the time, don't we? Tell people to be different. I say to our team members, you should be more collaborative. Does it work? No. We say to our team members, you should be more innovative. Come on, guys, got half an hour. We'll do some innovation. Does it work? No. Tell our children to keep their rooms tidy. Does that one work? No. tell ourselves to be different all the time, don't we? But that rarely works too. So it's not necessarily about working on behaviors which drive team performance, leadership frameworks and values on a wall. It's really about changing the words and pictures in people's heads that drive a different feeling and a different action. So therefore, what we need to do to commit to better teamwork is not necessarily decide upon the behaviors, but really decide upon the thoughts. And how do we change new perspectives? How do we change perspectives to allow us new possibilities and new opportunities? I honestly believe that intelligence and facts are no longer as useful as they used to be. I think attitude is more important than intelligence or facts. High technical expertise is no longer as valuable as it used to be. And I'm sorry to tell you that, guys, but it's true. High technical expertise is no longer as valuable as it used to be. And do you know why? Because we can Google things, that's why. So where's the differentiator between you and your traditional competition in a world which is moving as fast as it is? In regard to your team, it's not in what they know, it's how they think about what they know, which makes the difference. And in a world as disrupted as this, I would always take I will over IQ. I'd always have a team of people who choose to come together to create something which is bigger and better than what they could create on their own. Rather than people who had technical knowledge, who tried to play their way out of this by relying on their speciality. So I guess that as we come to form better communities, as we come to form better ways of playing into each other and new networks, I guess that we need to change what we believe to be true. There's never been a better time for organizations and individuals to challenge what they believe to be true. We all have a particular viewpoint on the market, we have a viewpoint on the economy, we have a viewpoint on our customers, we have a viewpoint on ourselves, we have a viewpoint on our technologies. Whatever we believe to be true in all these areas probably is not. And the problem is that we will always prove ourselves right, even when we're wrong. So I guess that as we become more open-minded, more agile in our thinking, start to question and challenge and become more curious about the world in which we're now living, but I guess that we can see new possibilities and new opportunities. The assumptions that this world is built upon, and in fact many of our businesses have been roundly challenged, proved maybe not to be true. So if we continue as a team of people to define ourselves by what we sell, rather than what our clients value, how can we ever become future literate or future relevant as a team? There's a big difference between what we sell as an organization, or it's a team of people, a leadership team, and an even bigger difference between what our customers value. For us to be future relevant or future literate, for our team to move in a purposeful direction, our team to get home together and share more, connect more, and argue more, we need to decide upon the value that we're seeking to create for others in a world which is moving as fast as it is. I've got an eye on the clock. It says 3:15 for me. I've probably done about 14 minutes or so. I'd like to think there's some provocation in there, as much as takeaways, because I know that you're going to hear some fabulous speakers today. I know that we've got some time for Q&A. So I hope there's a little bit of challenge and provocation, which may prompt some questions, more so than give some answers to you. I thank you so much for your time so far. Thank you very much indeed, Geeta.
Thank you so much, Jamil. That was excellent. And you're right, lots of questions here, and I'm sure lots of you have questions too. So if you do, please put them in the Q&A chat box. So let's move on to our second speaker now, who is Dr. Yitzka Kromer. As a corporate anthropologist, an entrepreneur, and an author too, Yitzka takes audiences on a journey to the essence of culture, what culture means. She looks at how people shape culture and how culture shapes people. And it sounds like a really big idea, but she also provides lots of examples for organizations, practical examples. So really delighted to introduce Dr. Yitzka Kromer now.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. I'm here from the Netherlands, Utrecht. And yes, I am an anthropologist, and I'm on a quest, because my quest is, how can we build tribes in which people feel safe and included? And in terms of corporates and money, how can we utilize everything we have to maximize our profits in a way that we, well, at least to me, build a better world? So what I do, I travel the world to understand how people shape cultures and how cultures shape people. And I put those into stories and I compare that to what we need in the business world. And sometimes when the world is open, I do climb on stage. So in my travels, I meet lots of people and everyone can teach us something. And to give an example, I went to Togo last year, and that's where I met Chabasi. And Chabasi is a voodoo priest. And it's a long story, but one lesson I'd like to share now, because I think it's very relevant in the times we live now. Because Chabasi, I asked him, if I speak to leaders in Europe and you could give them a lesson, what would you tell them? So Chabasi said, well, the thing is, if I think about Europe, you seem lost because you don't know where you're from anymore. If you think about families, you can count one generation back, maybe two, but not even more. And he said, if you, as people, don't know where you're from, how do you know where to go to? And I think, especially in these COVID times, this is very true. If we need to take new decisions, we need to know where we're from in order to move forward. So I travel the world to understand how people shape cultures, to find answers to universal questions. But the thing is, you don't have to travel very far. And if you know my country, you know that this is our football team. So we do funny stuff as well. And to bring it a bit closer to your home, maybe you do funny stuff as well. So what anthropologists do, we make the familiar strange and the strange familiar. And I just love that sentence. We make the familiar strange. That means that the things which are familiar to you, if you take a longer look, they're really strange. And the things which are strange to you now, if you take a closer look, they become familiar. And therefore, an anthropologist is in a constant state of slight to strong confusion. And I love to spread that. So my quest is, how do people build strong tribes, safe for diversity, and therefore ready for change? And a tribe is just a community of people wanting to do something. They have a goal. And the thing is, if you optimize all individuals within your organization or your team, yeah, you get a better team. But you should optimize the mutual relationship, because a tribe is as strong as the relationships are strong. And safe for diversity, because we know that each individual is different, each subgroup is different. So the different departments and teams within your organization, they're different. So culture is basically a way to organize the differences between people. And if we do that well, and we deal with different views in a correct way, then yes, we're ready for any change. So I write books about that because I like it. And the question around it is constantly, how do we build future tribes with century-old human wisdom? Because all the challenges, they seem new, but they're not. We've seen them before as mankind. So people shape cultures, cultures shape people. And we do it all over the world, and we do that in office spaces. So the basic thing is a lesson in anthropology in just a couple of seconds. Nothing has meaning of itself. I repeat, nothing has meaning of itself. Every behavior just is. But because we cannot live in a situation like that, it's chaos, we got to define together what we think is good and bad, and beautiful and ugly, and true and false. So people shape cultures in the sense that we have to deal with everything in the world, and it gives us a framework. Now that framework, where we are born into or where we live into for a longer period of time, or the company we work in, it shapes us as well. And therefore the culture you grow up in, all the opinions you have in your mind, they're shaped by the people around you. Now, how do people shape cultures? And that's important for leaders, for teams. The thing is that the two processes which are vital in an organization and a team to shape your culture is interaction and decision making. So you got to optimize your interaction processes, and you got to be clear who can decide what. Now, obviously, due to COVID and we all work from home, we need to optimize interaction. And what you see is a campfire, because we have bullet point meetings, and which are good. They're transactional meetings, and we need to make them very effective, and online helps. But the other type of interaction we have is transformational interaction. And that's the type of interaction where we shape and reshape what we believe in. And that's what we need when we change and we take new strategies. And therefore, I use the metaphor of a campfire. You know, it's at campfires when you just picture us sitting at a campfire, you stare in a fire, and then you suddenly share this story. Or you say, I'm really upset about something that happened. Or do you remember? Or what do you think? So campfire conversations are very important in shaping cultures. So the first question I have to you is, do you have enough campfire conversations, especially at this very moment? It's basically how to humanize digital conversations. And then you need to be clear in who is deciding what, because people shape cultures and cultures shape people. Nothing has meaning of itself. We got to create, let's say, this one story which everyone buys into. And we all believe the same thing. We are targeted. We have the core values there. The client is in focus. And then the thing is, in every team all over the world, there's always one that thinks different. So if you look at this picture, what is it that you see? You probably see this one bird hanging upside down, and I called that little bird Harry, but you can give it any name, Harriet or Fatima, Ahmed, Mo, Jean-Paul, it's fine. What do we say to Harry? Most people say something like, well, act normal, get up or do something. Usually it's not like the human reflex to say, wow, what do you see? And that's a shame, because every change comes from someone with a different perspective. So Harry is the metaphor of a different perspective. And the thing is, if someone feels differently about something and you feel you cannot express it, and you notice that people don't really listen to you, or they roll their eyes when you say something, you tend to keep it for yourself. But if it's really important to you, it won't go away. It won't fly away. So you feel you start talking with your friends about it. You be annoyed. You gossip with some other people. You delay stuff. And basically, the thing is, if we don't listen to deviant voices or different views, then there will be sabotage behavior in your organization. And I'll show you a sabotage line, the type of behavior, which is like a diagnostic tool to see whether or not you are open to all different views. So if you look at this, then the first thing people do when they feel they should say something, but they feel a bit shy to do so, they start making jokes, and it becomes more sarcastic. We have excuses, we gossip with people, and this is sabotaging, because people will start saying, it feels a little bit safe to share my thoughts, and I'll only share my thoughts when I feel it's safe. But that's a double catch, because it will start becoming safer once we share our thoughts, but we only do so when it's safe. Well, this diagnostic tool gives you an idea on how safe it is for diversity, and who feels that they have their say, but they can also influence the decision-making process. And that brings us to the topic of inclusion. So my quest is also, how do we build inclusive cultures? Or in other words, how do we make sure that people who want to join the action, which is called live or work, they can actually, they're able to join the action. And then can they join the conversation about how we do stuff? And can they actually take part in the decision-making process? Well, that's my Jam Cultures book. It's all about that. How can we make a jam session with all the differences we have? For now, I'd like to say that in every tribe, in every team, in every organization, every culture, we have two forces that help us build the culture we need. And we need both. And there's no good or bad, but the balance needs to be right. And I'll explain them to you, and I'm curious which one fits you best. So the first force that every team needs to have, every organization, you gotta have the force of power. It's like the result-driven force. It's where you put the targets and you get them going. It's like adrenaline. You have dopamine, you get them, you hit the system. It's rebellious as well, because if things need to change, you put the power in to change it. And it gives a good energy in the team. But if you only have this power, it's absolute burning energy. So you gotta balance it with love. And love is not a word we usually use in organizations or corporate language. But in the end, it's what we need. You can also call it connection if you're more comfortable with that. But the thing is, those are those campfires. So if the power is the torch, like your mission of your organization, the why you have, and you put all the torches together, you have this great campfire. And at the campfire, you don't have to fight for your position. You can just stare in the fire of your organization and say, I need some help. Or what's up with you? And that's where we build connection. It's oxytocin. And obviously, you have to have the right balance. And especially during these Corona times, I think many of us use the force of power to keep things, to drive things. And at the same time, I think we need to be careful not to lose the power of love, because that brings me to the idea of culture change. And there's obviously a lot to share about this. But in terms of COVID, I think it's good to realize that we might be in a collective global culture shock. And if you'd like to know more about that, I made a small infographic, which you can find on YouTube, about the different phases we go through. But for now, I'd just like to focus on the realization that in this culture shock, everything we thought what was normal is not normal anymore. So like I explained, people shape cultures, nothing has meaning of itself. So at this very moment, we can reshape anything we like. And we hit very important conversations, like what is the value of a human being? You know, where do we spend our money on? How do we save what needs to be saved? There's people having hunger at this very moment. There's refugees and yes, there's companies and there's people alone at home. There's people falling ill. So what do we do? And I think in this core issue, we are at the verge of a culture change. But you can also look at Corona times as more like a crisis. So the question is, do you look at this period of time as a crisis where we just have temporarily ways of dealing with the inconvenience and not be able to touch each other and to be in a 1.5 meters. And then we just wait it out until the normal gets back again. Or do you experience this time as a transformational time? And in that sense, it's more like a journey in which you can think again and you have interaction processes to decide together what is good and bad and right and wrong and true and false. So I guess that in the old days, the normal days, February 2020, I'm sure that many of you were running change programs. And maybe they're on hold now, but this is the moment where you can change. So we need to take the energy out to make sure that we use this period well, because anthropologists call this period of time where what was is no longer and what will be is not clear yet. We call that liminal. It's like betwixt and between, and it has this feeling. There has this storyline of the things we do, but suddenly what was is no longer. What will be is not yet. And what is just chaos and uncertainty. And in a way, this is a great time as well. It can feel like you're in love, but you're not sure the other one loves you back. It is exciting and it's scary at the same time. We're in liminal stages, and therefore we need liminal leadership and liminal teamwork. And again, I can tell you loads about that. For now, the main thing is that you got to tell each other, you're not lost, you're here. And once you decide you're not lost, but you're here, you're not lost anymore. And then maybe add to that, and I'll be here with you. So these are exciting times for teams, and the team will get stronger when the relationships are stronger. So how do we do that, right? So now we need the tips and tricks. Well, for now, I just tell you that we could travel to the Quakers and learn how we can use silent meetings to really listen to the voices within. Or we could travel to Togo to learn more about the spirit world and the past, the present, and the future, and how to deal with that. Maybe we can even go to Borneo to see the hat hunters and learn what we can do with the competition. Or we travel to Vegas and we learn about wedding rituals. Or India, where we learn about how to deal with building up inner strength if other people feel you are untouchable. Or to Iran to learn about Tarov. But maybe we can do it another time. But for now, I hope you got some lessons on how we can build strong tribes, safe for diversity and ready for change, with power and with love. And in anything you do, anything you decide, every interaction you have is called teamwork. And in teamwork, it doesn't matter who says it, because your thoughts, your words, and your actions, they matter. So take care, safe travels, and I'll talk to you in the panel discussion.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yitzka Kromer there, and can't wait to have you back at the end as well, because I'm sure there are lots more questions there. And thank you for the questions that are already been brought in. We will definitely put them to our panel at the end. So let's go to our final speaker, Matt Dawson. So here is someone who really does know what teamwork is all about from a very different perspective. So if you're not familiar with Matt, I'm sure many of you are, he was an integral member of the England rugby team's 2003 World Cup success. He is a hugely charismatic speaker and is really adept at taking teamwork, leadership and high performance strategies from the pitch to the boardroom. So I'm really delighted to welcome Matt. Over to you, Matt.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jitske and Jamil, great stuff. It stood out for me, just a phrase that Jitske just mentioned, it's time to change. It's as if I was just segueing nicely into some of the things that I would maybe like to get across, because I see this adversity that we're going through as a huge opportunity. That might be a very optimistic view. One thing I did want to mention was that this thing here, I know you're all thinking, why is Matt Dawson sat next to some kind of flamingo? It's already been asked. It's a very simple answer. That if I move it out of the way, it looks like I'm in the toilet. And everyone thinks that I'm just, yeah, but I'm not. I'm in the office. You're in my house. Okay, so where do you go? I need to up my technology a little bit. I'm going to share screen like we've all been sharing screens, rather than what Jitske had, which I need to get. But what I would like to maybe just run through in the 10 or so minutes is some of the examples that I see for myself with businesses that I work for in a sort of a strategic sales consultancy role. They want me to go out and find new business. Of course they do. But in that process, it is involved. I get myself involved with lots of individuals and teams, and they want to know about high performance. Now that's all well and good ordinarily, but given the adversity right now, it's tough. I don't need to state the obvious. It is extremely difficult. So I just thought maybe I'm going to talk as I do this and see what my technical skills are like.
One shot on it, no one can cope with you.
Right.
Did I think that it goes true by
Right.
that football?
Yeah. Someone's talking in the background there as well, by the way, just so we know. Okay, let's play. How about that? Hopefully, I'm going to get a thumbs up from maybe Geeta. Give us a thumbs up.
But they're true, buddy.
Okay. Yes, perfect. We're good to go. My headline there around the adversity is based from my sporting background, because I will look back at probably two moments. One in 1999. And then another one actually in 2015. England were in the World Cup, hosting the World Cup 2015, didn't even get out of their group. I mean, talk about hit rock bottom. And yet 4 years later, they're in the World Cup final, probably played the greatest game of rugby ever against New Zealand in the semi-final. An amazing team, didn't win, but were incredible. In 1999, we got knocked out in the quarterfinals. We went on to win it in 2003. There was a seismic shift in the way that our team had to develop in that 4-year period. It's a little bit sort of pre-professional era, but joining it with maybe some of the more corporate examples that I've had over the years, I suddenly then start to see a lot of the characteristics of good teams and good team people in and around the workplace. There you can see from those top two pictures how it used to be, very old school, baggy shirts. That the guy running through the tackle, holding the ball, is a guy called Jonah Lomu, and the guy trying to tackle him is actually me, believe it or not. I played against Jonah Lomu 4 times in my career, and that is the only evidence of me touching him in 4 games of rugby. But I cherish it. Let's go through how it used to be. Maybe draw comparisons how it used to be pre-COVID, because we all know it's going to change. It's already changed significantly, but there's some change for good here. Yeah, that eyes-on analysis of going, you would only watch the games. Arguably, is that how we used to work, by roaming the offices and making sure that, yes, people are attending. They're in the office, therefore they're getting a tick in the box. They are doing their number of calls at the brokerage. they are hitting their budget or going through their numbers. Is that enough now? It certainly wasn't enough just to have eyes on analysis of rugby. Back then, it's developed immeasurably. The measurement of success previously was results, was winning. Well, before all the analysis and the data and stats around rugby particularly, if you won, you probably got in the team the next week. You got a pat on the back. Well done. The one as a team, therefore as an individual, it's a big thumbs up. Not so much anymore when the analysis is down to the fine detail. The coaching was done on the training ground. That's where the team met, at the team hotel or at the team training ground, maybe in a little workshop office under the stand, then go out onto the pitch. Same at work. Most of the work gets done in HQ in Manchester, Birmingham, London, all these major cities. Is that now going to be the case? We all know that it's not. The training wasn't very tailored. The backs would do the same amount of work as all the rest of the backs. The forwards would do the same work as the forwards. I see it again. I see it in the workplace time after time. Induction, everybody doing the same type of induction. Everybody. Only a week ago, I was on a Pitch Pals presentation, going through the same presentation as everybody else. It wasn't tailored to me. And now we have this ability with the tech and the appetite of the right people to be able to do that. Highlighted by, I'm only going to say it once. All of these pieced together previously, and we can look at say previously as only a matter of months. If we wanted to be a team, we had to be together. I don't believe that's the case anymore. I'm getting quite bullish and positive about the way that we can create teams remotely. Yes, we're going to need to get in front of people, and the balance of that time period has to be absolutely spot on. But it's capable. Look at the sport, where the sport is right now in rugby, football, cricket, hockey, name it. The coaches that make decisions out of these data-driven exercises. The output is absolutely measured to the nth degree, but it gives an element of emotion and friendship, intimacy, because you're having these one-on-ones. I'm having one-on-ones with my team, and I'm speaking to my team in their bedroom, in their front room, in their kitchen. I'm getting to know these people. I'm understanding the pains that they're going through. I'm understanding the successes they're going through. I'm on the CRM system. I'm on Salesforce. I want to make sure that I know that they're going through the calls and they're having the meetings and what are the outcomes. You can look at it two ways. You can either look at it as it's big brother and there's no escape, or you can look at it that there is time to change, as Jitske mentioned, all right, and time to step up. Time to shine. That's exactly how I see it. And flipping back from the previous text there around being able to do this absolutely anywhere, I'm excited about that. And I know it's going to be difficult. A vast majority of your teams are probably not sat in an office in their own room if they're working from home. They're sat on the edge of their kid's bed because the Wi-Fi only works in that room. What we're going to do to make sure that the mental health of your teams are going to be at the appropriate levels for productivity. So of course there is work to do there, but there is an opportunity to sort your workplace out remotely. Can you do it in the local town, with the fact that now a lot of the retail outlets are now being able to be changed into office outlet. I know that is a huge dilemma, but these stories are starting to change. The opportunities are starting to grow. The information that we're all getting is so much different than maybe what it was 1, 2, 5, 10 years ago. If I go back to how I was when I was playing back in my day, I would be selected by teletext. If I was lucky, I might find out on the radio. But that was it. I had no call from the coach. I did have a call from Clive Woodward in the latter part of my career to tell me the team was going to be selected on a Sunday, and he phoned me at 4 a.m. in the morning, and I saw his phone was on. Sorry, my phone was on, and it was his name on the phone. And I picked it up and said, "Oh, hi, Clive." He said, "Oh, Dawson, I was hoping to leave a message." I was like, no, I was up training or doing something. What do you want, Clive? He said, well, yeah, I was going to leave a message because, you haven't made, I'm going to go with the same team that played a couple of months ago against New Zealand because they won the game. It's all about the winning. I'm going to go with that same team. I know you're going to be disappointed. I said, I am disappointed, Clive. I'm desperately disappointed that you haven't picked me for the weekend because I was in that team against New Zealand. He said, were you? I said, yeah, I was. He said, and quick as a flash, he said, oh, okay, you're in, which I thought was a magnificent bit of management at the time. Good manipulation from me. But there just strikes the point on the understanding of the data, the people, the emotion, the communication is significantly changed over time, and this moment in time now is ready and primed for us all to get the communication information that we can all get at incredible speed. It's a brilliant time to get it right and step ahead of the competitors. And there was a question earlier, I forgive me, who was talking about social media. I think I was skimming through some of the questions. Now building teams, you don't need to just be in the room. Of course that's going to help, and we all need that interaction. But I see sports people, I see my colleagues wishing another colleague happy birthday, or taking a little bit of Mickey out of a picture that was sent, or having a bit of fun, or they've been for a drink or something. All of a sudden there are multiple ways of building this camaraderie and friendship rather than just being on site, which is what I mentioned before. Now we can talk about creating teams absolutely anywhere, and that's going to take incredible management. It's going to take creativity and innovation, but the one key factor in all of this is you've got to have the right people. And there have been some incredibly tough times over the last 4, 5, 6 months with furlough, dismissal, resignation, etc., etc., etc. Now, though, have you got the right people in your team to go and knock it out of the park? Because stealing the line from Jitske, it is time to make that difference. It is time to be a differentiator. It's time to make the change and get excited about making that change. Let me get out of there. You're back. So I made a couple of notes on in a general conclusion. Oh, look at that! Right on the button. 45. Perfect. Sometimes in sport, in fact, most of the time in sport, it's about setting goals, personal goals, team goals. And if you want to be an elite sports person or in an elite team, it's about setting the bar high. And I know that's not necessarily going to be particularly easy if you want to make excuses. I see this as an opportunity to create a bar, however high you want that to be. You have an opportunity to create a bar which is better than other teams, other businesses, other competition. Because you can go either way. You can sit here as management and think we're all in it and we're all struggling and we'll plow on and we'll get through it. Or we have the mindset, and listening to both speakers previous to me, it's about having that little bit of spark in your mind to be able to create the playing field, to use that sporting analogy, for people to blossom and shine. I know that we're going to go into a Q&A. I'm sure there are a few questions out there that Geeta has pieced together. So Geeta, let's leave it to you.
I should be rejoined now by Jamil and also by Jitske. And Matt, you're right, we've got some really great questions that have been coming in. So I thought I'd kick off actually with a question, which I think is something that you've all touched upon really, but in sort of different names and in different ways. So Jamil, you mentioned community right at the start, you know, replacing the word team with community. And Yitzka, you talked about tribes. And just then, Matt, when you were talking, you sort of mentioned that kind of intimacy that has come through getting to know your team, you know, the person on the laptop at the end of the bed, because that's the only place for Wi-Fi. But, you know, in a sense, you're seeing new parts of your workforce. And I thought it was a really good question that came in from Laura Henderson, who asked, you know, how do you cultivate community in organizations where there are multiple value outcomes? So that sense of, you know, a community, but you know, people have different values. They have different things they need to get out of a situation. So Jamil, let's start with you, because you did use the word community specifically.
Okay, yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, I think that's one of the problems with business as opposed to sport. So in sport, the reason why you can get, I don't know, a group of rugby players to play together, or a group of Premiership footballers, and these footballers or rugby players may not even share the same language, may speak different languages, different religions, different cultures, but they all play perfectly together for 90 minutes if they're a football team, unless they're Derby County, then they don't. But the reason why they do that is because it's really easy to understand what winning looks like. And the answer is in the question that because it's difficult to know what winning looks like in business, you get people who move into areas which are of importance to them. And so we need more simplicity and clarity on what success looks like to bring people together. And I think that one of the interesting aspects, I guess, culturally, is that you can celebrate achievement, or you can celebrate the activity which gets you there. So when this all started to kick off at the beginning of the year, I did some work with guys in St. Thomas's Hospital. And they moved an ICU, moved this intensive care unit, from one floor to another floor. And it usually takes 10 months to do that. And they did it in 4 days. So you can either celebrate that achievement, the execution, or you can talk about what it is that allowed it to happen. So well done, guys. This is 2 teams who don't usually come together. They came together, problem solved in these 3 areas. Well done, that's brilliant. It gives you much more chance to come together sustainably for success when you celebrate the activity or character which allowed it to happen, more so than the actual success itself. And so the way in which you build teams and build cultures is, let's celebrate what's good about us. Let's understand our strengths. I've actually worked with teams before who've actually weakened a strength by trying to strengthen a weakness. So let's understand our strengths and play to them more, and understand what's good about us, start to celebrate the activity more than the achievement, but keep a simplicity to the common goal and what we do to play into that. It's also really interesting at the moment to ask different questions of our team members. So many of our meetings on Zoom are purposeful, work-related, metrics-driven. It's quite nice to ask some different questions, such as, you know, what have you discovered this week? What surprised you about this week? And what are you experimenting with this week? We start asking some questions of that, you know, Jitske will know much more about this than me, and then we start to understand each other from a perspective of storytelling. And it's that storytelling and personal sharing which allows us to play into each other in a different way from just simply satisfying the work metrics. I think so. Let's ask some good questions of each other as well to make sure we're understanding each other in a way which brings us together.
And Yitzka, great time, you know, to bring you in here, because you know, you talked a lot about that campfire aspect and how important those conversations are. But, you know, how do you create community in a corporate landscape where, you know, there are people that have different interests and different things that they want?
The same like you would do in a community, because even in a family, we're not all on the same page, right? So it's a given that we all have different views and different ways to do so. And if you think about culture, I think one of the misconceptions is that it needs to be a monoculture with one story, one storyline, everyone on the same page. And it's not like that. And I like to compare it to, if you look at the city, then there's different areas within the city and have their own identity. And if you want to go and live there, you really particularly choose a specific area because it fits you. But you know it's this city, like it's London, it's not Amsterdam. So So identity and culture, a company has one company culture, which is really, it's kind of the story which we can all buy into, but also feel connected to, but it leaves space for the different interests. So every department will have their own subculture, their own rhythm, their own sub goals. But in the end, if you add it all up, you all work towards the same idea. And if not, then you need to have clear conversations. And therefore, that's why I mean with campfires is, like I said, we have transactional interaction and transformational interaction. And transactional interaction is really good. It's what I call bullet point meetings. It's where the matrix kicks in, what Jamil is saying. And we need to have that. And we need to, it's almost like we organize what already was organized. But when we go through change and when we go through more difficult issues, or when we would want to build the team and build new relationships, it is really through warm conversations. And campfire, it's a metaphor, although a real campfire is nice, but a metaphor in terms of digital. You can, like Jamil said, ask questions. And even in a corporate setting, there's nothing wrong with asking, how are you? And actually be interested to hear the answer.
Thank you, Jitske. And Matt, is there anything that you feel, having listened to that, because sort of Jamil mentioned at the start that when you're in a sporting context, you do have this sort of aim, I guess, this shared value as a team. But how do you take that to the corporate landscape?
Yeah, it's not all comparable, and I wouldn't pretend that it was, because ultimately, when you're playing team sport, particularly, you are invited to play into the team, and if you're not good enough, you're out on your ear from week to week. Now, any HR experts on this call will be flapping of the thought of me saying, get rid of the people that are not right. It's the cultural piece. Having people's individual culture is absolutely paramount to high performance teams. Got that, no problem. But there is also a time to not necessarily leave that individual culture at the door, but just lessen the influence of that culture and go towards the commonalities that both have been talking about earlier, because the business value is absolutely crucial. And sticking by that business value and making sure that all the individual cultural values fit in with that is going to make it incredibly secure and have longevity. And on top of all of that, again, more of a ruthless edge that maybe I'm bringing to this is around consequence management. And within teams, if you are going to buy into a common culture with your culture that you all believe is the right way forward, and making sure that the individuals do create it and own it is vital. But if you're all in agreement, then there has to be consequence management around that. Otherwise, it will shatter into 1,000 pieces the moment. In sporting terms, if you were late for a meeting, you got absolutely rifted. If you gave more than 3 individual penalties away, you were looking like you might get dropped. And if those things happen, not only was it pretty mean that you were going to get dropped, but you were letting your team down. And the peer pressure that has been developed around team cultures is massively powerful. And I like to see that in the corporate teams that I play in. It's not about the managers standing over them and telling them what they should be doing. That the best managers will be sat back and they will be managing themselves to success. And when someone steps out of line, they're going to be ashamed and disappointed that they stepped out of line themselves, because they drove the culture. They don't need anybody to say anything to them. It's in their mind, and you get a much more high performance from your individuals if they're monitored and managed by themselves.
Can I ask you a question, Matt?
Sorry.
I love what you're saying, and I'm just curious how you then look at how to deal with diversity within the team.
Yeah, I mean, the diversity, as I said, is vital, because it's creating the culture that you are taking forward. But a high performance, okay, so a rugby team is an England rugby team or a national rugby team is made up of many different clubs that see each other every single day and have their own diversity, whether it's Leicester, Northampton, Wasps, Saracens, whoever it may be. And then all of a sudden you're saying to the best players of those clubs, right, come together, we've got England culture now, and we play England rugby, and you've got to be the best in the world. And you've got the Saracens player saying, oh, we defend like this. And the Leicester player saying, well, we attack like this. No, we defend like this. If you don't get that common culture right. Now, I know a lot of that isn't as transferable into the day-to-day life, but there is some theory behind that of, rather than putting their hand up and saying, at Leicester, we defend this way, it's, well, how can I incorporate all the best bits out of my Leicester defensive culture? How can I incorporate that into England? Do I talk to the defensive coach? Do I talk to an influential senior player and say, have we tried should we maybe try this drill? That might work because of X, Y, and Z, or look at this analysis of how we played against this team. And if we had defended like Leicester, we would have shut that down. But in the same breath, you've got to be able to create the environment that welcomes that type of conversation. And it's an open enough forum for the young apprentice who, as far as diversity goes, is right up against it because he's 19 years old. He's only played a handful of games for his club. He's going into an environment for England, but he's a really good player. Is he going to put his hand up and have those conversations if it's a closed environment? Absolutely not. So that's where the management comes into it.
Thank you so much. And actually, I guess that kind of builds on what Jitske was saying earlier about that safety, that feeling of safety in a tribe as well, to be able to be open like that. Well, there were some other questions that I wanted to put to you, but I think you've sort of answered some of them as well in what we've just been hearing. And I'm just conscious of the time, and I know that everyone needs to get on to what they're doing next. So thank you so much for everyone who's come along to this session today. Thank you to Jamil, thank you to Yitzka, and thank you so much to Matt for being a part of this. If you have been watching this and thinking, I'd love to know more about the speakers, or if you have an event that you're organising yourself, Speakers Corner have lots of information, so please do get in touch with them. So thank you so much for joining us today, and have a great rest of day. Goodbye.